shooter.
I do it almost every day at work.
Yeah, I mean, and that's so gloves for you, gloves for somebody around you. You know, because if you have extra gloves, access for gloves for somebody else, and you're just like, somebody's like, what can I do to help? Well, first glove up. They're right there, marked.
I actually ran into that situation at a concert. A kid got knocked out and split the back of his head open. And I was the first one there before any of the EMTs or anything. And I actually wasn't thinking because it was kind of a serious situation. And I grabbed my friend's T-shirt and just slammed it on the back of his head. And I didn't have any gloves or anything.
Yeah.
And when the EMT showed up, I was like, hey, do you have an extra pair of gloves? And she looked at me like I spoke a completely different language.
Yeah. And that's and gloving up, man, there's so much shit out there. I mean, it's just, and honestly, when you get in, we've all been there, we've all bled on ourselves at least. When you get lots of blood on you, it doesn't come off.
Mm-mm.
And, and it's everywhere. So worst case, you go and you try to help somebody and you're not able to, right? I mean, you're too late, or whatever. You didn't have the skills, or whatever. Something happens. So at least I can peel those gloves off and not be sitting there scrubbing for hours trying to get that bad memory out. You know what I mean? So there's two parts of it, because everything that you see, you can't unsee. And that's the shitty part about medical side. Sometimes you're going to fail and you can't unsee it. You can't do that. So the things that you can do to protect you, get the bleeding stop, glove up, get the bleeding stop, get everything covered up, do your best, then everything is kind of, you're able to put it in that box much easier.
Well, I mean, we can keep going a little more. We've been doing it for 1 hour and 33 minutes, so that's completely up to you, sir.
It's you guys' podcast, whatever works best for your audience. I'm used to the primary and secondary ones. We've gone 8 hours or 12 hours before. So.
Oh my.
Yeah. So where do you draw the line on too much everyday carry gear?
He's really got to think about this one.
So, one, if you don't know how to use it, don't fucking carry it.
Agreed.
Right?
Yep.
I mean, if you look at it and you're just like, well, I bought this because the internet said so, and you've never been to a class on it, or you look at it and you're just like,
how does this work?
Don't carry it. And number two, if it affects your life, like if it's like, something like, I can't go to the movie because I can't sit down for 3 hours because I have so much bullshit on me. And it's just, like I say, if you don't know how to use it, don't have it. I generally carry Glock 19 or Glock 26. I carry some sort of blade. I have when the car and the motorcycle all have multi-tools of some sort in a multitasker or Gerbers or whatever. But some sort of blade. All my keys have one of those little stupid multi-tools that go on your keychain.
Mm-hmm.
That have the, and a decent quality one, because if it says 10 millimeter, you want it to be 10 millimeter.
Yeah.
And
because that's the one we always lose.
Yeah. And, having it on your keys, then more than likely it's going to be around. And, some sort of light source if you're doing things that, or possibly, I don't carry a flashlight on me during the day. Usually have a weapon light, but I don't carry one on me during the day. But I have one like on the motorcycle, or I have one in the truck. And if I'm doing something like we're going to the movies or whatever, because a high lumen pocket flashlight is probably more useful in some sort of thing happening at the movie theaters than your pistol. So, having that, if it's going to be dark, generally plan ahead and have some sort of light. But that's really it. I mean, if you look like a moron because you're carrying all the stuff, you look like you're going on a deployment, you're going out on the beat, then you've got too much stuff. You know what I mean? Have a pistol, have a light source, have a blade. And speaking of blades, take a knife class.
That's something I actually want to take this year.
Yeah, everybody's carrying. Everybody have a blade with you. Have a blade. And you're like, all right, cool, man. Is that a slashing blade? Is that a stabbing blade? Is it a not that kind of blade? You know, what technique do you use for your blade work? Which your blade hand? How you doing this? What are you trying to do with the blade? And everybody's just like, I'm opening letters with it, man. Or that's cool, man. You don't have to have a blade. You can have a blade in the mailbox. You don't have to have it on your person if you don't know what to do with it. There's a lot of little places that do intro to blade technique classes, but you need to have a class. Just going to karate doesn't teach you how to use blade. So one of my favorite blade instructors, well, two of them. One does all my custom knives. That's Jeff Crowner. He's out of Dallas. He does training on Salat. It's the Filipino knife fighting stuff. And then another one is he used to run MDTS, or still runs MDTS. Chris, and his name just slipped out of my head. I haven't talked to him in a hot minute, but I took a bunch of his blade classes up in New York. So find somebody, Sayak, Tom Keir does a lot of good training. Find somebody that's fighting with a knife, and at least take an intro class, just so you can kind of understand, what that knife is going to do to you. So I have my shooting stance and I have my knife fighting stance. So when I'm shooting, my left foot is forward, and my pistol stance and my rifle stance are all pretty much the same. But then when I'm doing knife fighting type stuff, my right foot is forward, because I get more reach. And if you haven't been to a class, then you're not even understanding it. You're just going to fight with your knife. And guys end up, they're like, I'm shooting my pistol here, shooting my rifle here, and then I've got my knife. I'm going to do my knife. So I got a blade, I've got a pointy thing, it's right here. And then I've got this hand that's out in front of it. And then this guy, and then I stab myself in the hand. So,
Yeah.
and you don't think about that until you got somebody teaching you something, and you've got a dummy knife, and you're just like, man, if I strike right now, I'm cutting off about 6 to 12 inches of reach, and I'm probably going to stab myself. So,
and that's something. It's something I actually have read into. I don't know what you think of Varg,
yeah.
but I read his book, and reading that book even says, like, that's a whole nother mindset, is fighting with a knife and everything.
Yeah. The knife work, you're going to get cut more than likely, unless you're doing the attacking. Okay. From a defensive side, if you're in a knife fight, then things are probably going to be bad, and you need to get things done before he gets things done. Right.
Yep.
So, and Paul Howe, once upon a time said that he would rather be involved with the shooting than a gunfight, because the shooting is one person shooting and the other person receiving. Gunfight is they're doing it back and forth. So if it comes to knife stuff, you'd rather be issuing a stabbing than getting into a knife fight. And a lot of people, they carry these blades on, and they're like, I have a blade. They have no plan to deploy them. They don't know how to deploy them, and they don't know how to fight with them when they have it. So really all that is either something that you won't even take out because you won't even think about it, or you'll be that guy that's like, back off, man, or I'll cut you. And you're like trying to open the stuff up, and you got it, and you don't even not even holding it right, and the guy just takes it from you and stabs you with your own knife.
I hope I'm not that way, but I do carry a knife every day.
and carrying a blade, if it's just an everyday carry one, buck knife, that sort of thing. This is one of my favorites. I got a Emerson that deploys pretty good, but anything that I'm doing for real, like all of my kit has a fixed blade on it. I'm a fixed blade kind of guy, but I have folders for that specific purpose of not running around looking like a retard.
No tactical Timmy.
Nah, yeah, and that in fact, we got this patch made. I don't know if you guys can read that.
Tactical, yes.
I
try not to look like that when I go out. because I don't want to draw attention to myself.
Yeah, and I wear multicam hats, and I wear, front towards enemy shirts, and all that sort of stuff. I'm not trying to be the gray man. I'm not trying to do any of that crap. I look like a vet, so I dress like a vet. I walk around like a vet. So people assume that I'm going to have some sort of blade or a gun on me. Okay.
Good guess.
good guess. And I'm a vet, so I could probably use it. So, all right, let's do this, right? But but if you if you're to the point where you have to have pouches, it's
Yeah.
too much. So that's just some thoughts on that. If you have it, know how to use it, and make sure it's charged up, because nothing's worse than having a light that's got dead batteries in it.
Or is finicky like mine. It's like, yep.
Yeah,
There
it's
we
not
go.
working today.
I'll get you.
I got it.
It was a cheap $5 one. I don't use it a whole lot. It's just in my pocket, and if I've dropped something in the car in the dark or whatever, and
Yeah, and it is, if you can't, and there's so many guys that are like, man, I'm carrying this and I'm carrying this and I'm carrying this, and you're just like, dude, what's your use for it? And they're like, well, I don't know, just in case. Do a backpack, man. Have that shit in the car.
yep,
You
I
know?
carry a backpack a lot of times unless I'm going to work, because my father-in-law doesn't like me carrying a bunch of crap to work.
So we're down to our kind of two last questions, and then the ones that we ask everybody. Which there's an oddball in here because I'm gonna ask that one. So who do you think has the better marksman, Army or Marines?
For stationary targets,
He's got to get specific.
yeah, it is very specific. The Marine Corps has an outstanding program, but they shoot stationary targets and they practice for 2 weeks before they do it, right? So what the Marines found, and I talked to a lot of Marines, and I went to their little symposium thingy that they got. When they know where the target is,
Mm-hmm.
they shoot better. They shoot tighter groups. They shoot better when they're practiced. But if you take a guy that shoots in it basically non-distance range, and it's that you can't parry, and it pops up, and you see in the Marine Corps stuff, and it does this. Guys that shoot on stationary targets all the time, as soon as they have like Army pop-up targets, their initial exposure to that, because their timing is all weird, it's in their head, they've got this much time to do this, and my shot process takes me 6 seconds to do, or 5 seconds or whatever, and they know how much time they can take. But when there's these snap targets that pop up, they don't do so good initially, right? But the guy that's used to the pop-up targets, if I put him on a stationary thing, he's not used to holding his position that long, so he shoots like ass. So it's kind of weird. There's unknown distance and unknown when it pops up, and then there's this thing. So I would say that they shoot exactly the same, just situation dependent on who's got the advantage at that point. So what the perfect thing would be is a guy does all the stationary training and all of the pop-up training on low percentage targets that pop up. And they do both of those things, which the Marine Corps is actually instituting. They're doing it different than the Army did. They're using robotic targets for it. But they're doing those sort of presentations on it because the Marines were like, hey, we shoot like shit if we go shoot an Army pop-up range. And just because the guys aren't used to moving left and right and doing all these things and shooting at, a 300-yard target, a 50-yard target. But the Army guys, like I say, if I put them on that 300-yard target and I go shoot this 40 times in 5 minutes, they're going to hit it like 20 times because they're not used to staying in that one position that whole time. So it just depends on, that Marine Corps is going to be like, oh, well, I'll shoot Army every time. And an Army guy just beat the Marine Corps at their own little competition. So,
one that's kind of a current events question that we had is, what's your thoughts on POTUS clearing the charges for the 3 special ops guys?
I think that, and I didn't get into a lot of details on there because there's a lot of things that were considered war crimes or not considered war crimes that should have been. And there's been a lot of things that happen in theater that probably shouldn't have happened. So without having all the details and being able to see everything with the case, I didn't want to have an opinion on it. But what I think that Trump saw, because he got the full briefing, right? He was like, why are we doing this to these dudes? And he's a president, so somebody answered him, right?
Yeah.
That was just, it was probably some poor captain that had to come in and brief him. So somebody gave him the answers. And he's like, that's dumb. I don't believe it. And so he had people investigate it. So he had his people look at it and felt that it was wrong and did the pardon on it. I'm just glad that at those high levels, they're asking the question, right? Because at those high levels, you know, the chief of staffs and the secretaries of the Army, Navy, you know, presidents, you know, high generals, they don't ask this really specific question, just like, why are we sending this guy to jail? And then somebody else has to come up with a full answer to convince that guy and boil it down into whatever that guy's attention span is, 30 seconds, 40 seconds, 2 minutes, whatever, of why we should do this. So the fact that he had asked the question and he was getting involved in it, I think is important, because not only for the civilian accountability for the military, but also for the military to be able to see that the civilians are paying enough attention to actually look what's going on. So I'm glad he did it. Not saying that those guys were innocent or guilty, or that they were great people and great Americans, because they did something that was considered by the courts and the UCMJ that was bad. So not saying anything on their character or whatever, but they got themselves into a bad spot that they couldn't talk their way out of. So something was probably some sort of awry.
Cool.
But I'm glad they're asking.
18. Yeah. We actually had these all typed out. Oh yeah, that was my last one before we got to the last five. So the one question that he wanted to ask: do you have any other non-firearm hobbies, like cigars, whiskeys,
Writing novels?
Yeah, writing novels.
So pretty much right now, and this is something that I've been curtailing for the past 2 years. I've basically had, at least for the past year, I basically had about 8 jobs. And everybody's like, oh, I work 2 jobs. I'm like, I would love to have only 2. You know what I mean? So when I got out of the Army, I signed a 7-book deal with the Vigilant Security Services. There's an M4 handbook that Mike Pannone did. Eric Lawrence and Mike Pannone made the M4 handbook. It's an outstanding book. That's getting ready to republish. It's going to have my name on it. So we're doing basically writing books about shooting. We started Quantified Performance, got Knights Armament, got my Patreon, got the Quantified Performance Patreon. So really my hobbies right now that don't involve shooting is I ride my motorcycle to work every day. So in that 15, 20 minutes, now that we moved to this nice red background room rental that I can't paint, but so I get about 15 minutes on the way to work and about 15 minutes on the way home. Sometimes I got a nice helmet.
Detours happen.
Yeah. Well, I've got a nice helmet that's got Bluetooth in it and everything, and it's got a good microphone on it, and I can answer my phone on the motorcycle. So generally in the morning, nobody's up that early. So I generally get my 15 minutes to work, but then 3 days out of the week, somebody's calling me at about 5 o'clock. So I'm doing 90 miles an hour. 70 miles an hour on the motorcycle, and I reach up and push the button, and I'm, talking about shooting things while doing it on highways. So, but I am going to, well, I realized one day when Facebook allowed you to download all your stuff. I don't know if you guys have ever done that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Facebook stuff, I'm going to download it. And then I'm going to, once I have it in a Word document, I'm going to start cutting all the good stuff out of it. So, and I go through memories, because the memories pop up every day. I click on it. And if there's a really good post in there, what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start taking those and they're going to turn those into a book. So it's not talking about, it's talking about all the other stuff. But what I just haven't figured out the format that I want to put it in. Because I don't know if people want to be associated with their answers or their comments, other than on Facebook. So I don't want to put it in a book and be like, I say something, it was a really good thing. It was really profound and it made people think. And I put it in the book and Zach said, so that's what I'm trying to figure out is how to get the comments into a good format. Because I just don't want to make it look like a book of Facebook posts, because you can get that for free just by being my friend.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can go back through all the stuff. So I'm trying to figure out how to take those really cool posts and turn them into a book. So, and there'll probably be some writing involved in that. I like writing, but I just don't want to do another war book, because I did 52 months total overseas. So there's a lot of Vietnam books that are like this thick that a guy was there like 8 months, so I could write, I got a lot of stories that I could do war book, but I just don't want to do another war book. So I was just, thinking about lessons learned, and because that could be stuff I learned about war, stuff I learned about, shooting, all that sort of stuff. So I'm going to use the Facebook stuff. But yeah, basically I'm either always talking, typing, or shooting guns. But people are like, oh, you're anti-second. Yeah, you're anti-Second Amendment and you don't care. Like, no, dude, my entire livelihood.
Everything. Somebody put that up the other day on one of your things that you posted, and I didn't even comment. I just kind of shook my head. I'm like, oh, this poor soul.
Yeah. If they take away, I mean, if another assault weapons ban comes in and they don't grandfather and they start collecting AR-15s, that would be really, really, really bad for business. But if all guns went away, that would be, I mean, like literally, I have no other idea how to make any kind of money. I'd have to go find a job like waste management or something, or ride in the back of a garbage truck and pick up cans and throw them in there, because that's the only thing I can think of to do.
Take out your anger on people's trash bags.
Yeah, I mean, it just lots and lots of money is involved in it, and people just don't understand it because they don't see everything. They just see some random post and they're just like, who the fuck is this guy? Bootlicker, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, hey, dude, I got $1 million contracts with police agencies that if I'm like, shoot the police, then I'll probably get fired, because if I cost my company, a $10 million contract because I was talking about shooting cops on the internet, that's probably going to take away some of my livelihood. I would fire me if I did that.
Well, I mean, other than the regular questions that we ask for all of our guests, I think that covers all of them.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh, well, can you ever have too much flat dark earth?
Did you seriously ask that?
Yes, I did. It was on the list. I'm asking it.
you got to have something to make it clash. You know what I mean? You got to have something to make it look good. So like this one is all black except for the FDE mount, right? So there's got to be something on there to make it clash. So if everything is, and you look at the Cerakote guns, speaking of 110s, the guys that are cloning it and they do the Cerakote on it and everything on it was Cerakoted the same tan.
Yes.
It's boring. He's like boring. So I'm not talking like FN, like 33 different colors, like a scar that has its own camouflage pattern because they can't do FDE on everything. That's not enough, but you got to have something that clashes.
All right.
I'm not a fan of flat dark earth.
I like flat dark earth, but I think people.
Our bedroom flat dark earth.
Yeah, if you didn't hear my wife, I actually went and took my old Magpul grip to Home Depot and said, I need you to match this color
Nice.
for a bedroom paint. And the girl looked at me. She goes, "Is that a rifle grip?" "Yes, I would like my bedroom painted flat dark earth, please."
Yeah, but you got to put some pinstripes on there.
We'll have something else to break it up, but just the look on her face was shocked when I came home with the paint. She wanted to strangle me.
I saw him painted it back there for over a year.
Yeah, we haven't painted it yet.
But I mean, you could have picked a color like this on the back wall here.
That lovely terracotta red.
Yeah, it's just, and the whole room. So basically this room that I'm in right now is the size of a 2-car garage because it's on top of the garage.
Oh wow!
So it's a good sized room, which means there's an ass load of this fucking color everywhere. And there's no. I walked in here and I was just like, man, what a waste of a good room. So after we're here for a few months, I'm going to ask him if we can possibly paint this room because it is.
Yeah.
So I put up a big banner behind me, but the camera, goes past it and it's just.
Yeah.
Our first apartment, the blue room.
Oh yeah, God no, yeah. She just reminded me our first apartment, or no, that was the second apartment. The second apartment had a robin's egg blue room,
Yeah.
and we couldn't paint it.
No. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, this is hideous. Like that was our storage room. Like nobody went in it. We just shoved all our shit in it. Well, I mean, I'll ask these last questions and then we can end the show. And if you want to hang out and BS for a little bit, we can. But the normal question, since you're more of a gun guy, we broke it down even further. Favorite firearm, favorite caliber, and favorite optic.
So